We hope you have enjoyed exploring this idea of whole life discipleship. And last time, we talked a lot about a worldview of whole life discipleship. But this week, we want to zero in on the term whole life itself. Specifically, why there's even a focus that is biblically based around this idea. To do so, we're going to unpack 3 scriptural concepts of whole life. And from there, use those concepts to compare your perspective with a whole life discipleship perspective.
Okay, and before we jump into this lesson, we'd love to hear from you. What stood out to you when in your research of the term whole life discipleship?
Great. We appreciate that. Now we'd like you to personalize it a bit. When you think about whole life in the context of whole life discipleship, picture that. What does that look like for you?
So what is this focus on whole life anyway? How would you define it?
Those are good ideas, good words, great definition. Here's a reminder then of what the Discipling for Development definition of whole life itself looks like.
So from last session, I suppose we'd already been unpacking this idea of whole life in the context of Scripture, but I think it'd be great for us to dig a little bit deeper and try to see some of the concepts and the themes that we saw not only in those verses, but also just in the entirety of Scripture. So, what are some concepts or themes that you all come to mind?
So I think shalom has to be there. Yeah.
I would also add abundant life.
That's good.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think tied really closely to both of those is this idea that all that God had intended. So Andy, why shalom?
Well, I know today we've kind of translated shalom as peace, but in the Hebrew concept, it's a lot more than just the absence of war, insecurity, violence, all that stuff. It's in essence, it's a lifestyle where everything is fitting together well and is healthy. And everything is working. So it's not just no violence, but it's everything fits together perfectly.
That's good. And then Rachel, you said abundant life. Why abundant life?
Yeah, Jesus actually talks about it. He says, I have come to give you life and give it in abundance. It's this idea of not just being alive, but being really alive, thriving.
And that Hebrew concept of really being alive really ties well with shalom, I think, because it's abundant life in all these areas and it all fits together.
And abundant life is actually a Greek term that means living above and beyond.
Yeah, and those both, like I said earlier, even when you guys were describing those concepts of shalom and thriving, this abundant life, those are really harken back to Genesis 1, where God in the beginning intended man to be in these perfectly placed lives, everything connecting well. But then we know that sin broke that, but that in Jesus we see this theme continuing in the New Testament of God now reconciling us back to himself so that we would be a blessing to others and see that fruitfulness multiply.
Before you get into next week's lesson, go on the internet and research the topic discipleship. See what you come up with.
And there's a book we would recommend as well. It's called Whole and Reconciled by Al Tizon.